In Flanders Fields where poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row. Today's episode is a little bit different, folks. We're paying tribute to the quiet, unsung heroes who served our nation in times of need. Today, November 11th, marks Remembrance Day for our Canadian and Commonwealth viewers. And for folks in the United States, it's Veterans Day. 11 a.m. Paris time today marks the time when the armistice was signed to officially end World War I, the war to end all wars. If we'd only known then what we know today about all the strife that would follow. Today I'm taking a personal point of privilege to pay tribute to the men and women who have selflessly donned the uniform of their country in service of a noble cause, be it freedom for our country or to free good peoples under the boot of tyranny. I've been fortunate to grow up in a country in a time of relative peace, and that relative peace was thanks in part to the millions and millions of men who answered the call to service in World War II. Farmers, fishermen, haberdashers, seamstresses, clerks, all laid down their tools and went off to war simply because it was the right thing to do. The greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw once said. Theirs was not to question why. There was a cause to uphold, freedom to defend, and a people to liberate. It was just that simple. Too many of them paid the ultimate price and laid down their lives for the cause. Even more returned from this cataclysmic war, broken of mind and body. But did they complain? Nope. They just got on with having families, building businesses, and contributing to our nation as a whole. Most of these folks are gone now, and I would like to think we will always remember them on this day of days. I know I will. I would like to pay tribute to just two of these men, my dad and my father-in-law. And perhaps through them you will see someone you may recognize. My dad, Joe, was a quiet, unassuming man from Cupar, Saskatchewan. He volunteered for service in the Royal Canadian Navy in 1940 at the tender age of 18. So young, in fact, that he had to get permission from his dad to enroll. For some reason, a lot of farm boys volunteered for the Navy. I never did get a straight answer out of Dad just why that was. Perhaps if somebody knows, you can leave me a comment. Not knowing much of what Dad did during the war was very typical. You see, my dad was the type of person that didn't talk about his exploits during the war. I can count on one hand the number of times the subject was actually brought up during our time together. One would only catch brief glimpses into his past, such as being at the D-Day landings or chasing the Kriegsmarine all over the North Atlantic on escort duty. You see, my dad served on a sub-chaser known as a Corvette. And for those of you that would like to get an idea of what my dad's service was actually like, I highly recommend the movie Greyhound with Tom Hanks. I'll leave a link in the description. Being posted to the East Coast provided my dad the opportunity to make lifelong friends and of course meet and marry the love of his life and my mom, Jean Evelyn, in the quaint town of Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. And that was that. No big flash. He went, he did his duty, and returned home in 1945 to start a family. There was a job to do, and he did it. It was not until 1993 that I had the privilege of meeting another one of these unsung heroes, Garnet Bud McIntyre. But neither one of these men would ever consider themselves heroes. Garnet, or Bud as everyone knows him, was born in 1918 in Victoria Cross, literally feet away from where I'm coming to you from today. You see, Deborah and I own the old homestead where he was born. Bud was an exceptionally gifted young man with a love of automobiles, motorcycles, and speed skating. A public school teacher by trade, Bud spent his pre-war years broadening the mind of his young charges and, of course, courting the love of his life, Gertrude Emmeline, or as he called her, Trudy. Bud answered the call to service in 1940, applying to the Royal Canadian Air Force as an aero mechanic, and eventually enlisting in the spring of 1941 as a radar mechanic, but not before attending to the matter of marrying the love of his life one day after Valentine's in 1941. Bud made his way to England via a North Atlantic convoy aboard the Warwick Castle, and I have to wonder if that particular convoy was not escorted by my dad. Once there, Bud would go on to serve at airfields known as Andover and Pedantic Down located in Land's End, before returning home to Canada for the balance of the war. Along the way, Trudy and Bud would welcome a war baby, Garnet McIntyre Jr. in 1943. At war's conclusion, Bud returned home to Trudy. He would go on to open a successful auto parts store in their community, and they would soon welcome another child into the family, Mary Karen Deborah. As with my dad, the war was over. He'd done his part, and it was time to move on. Yet, in private moments, the wall would sometimes drop, and you would hear about a fear that they may have faced, or a lament for a long-lost friend that didn't return. This, however, was rare. For the most part, they shouldered these burdens alone. So that's the way it was for these two men, and many, many more, I expect. Some of what they went through back then, we know today as PTSD. Today, our great servicemen and women have many tools available to help them deal with this very real disorder and consequence of armed conflict. For many in the greatest generation, there was very few tools available, and most of them suffered in silence, climbed in a bottle, or ended their lives. So what's the point of my ramble today? And what does this have to do with travel? My point is simply this. We live in a world today that is relatively peaceful despite all of the negative things that you see in the media out there now and again. We're able to travel to just about every country on the planet in relative safety. This is thanks in part to the sacrifice made by men like my two dads and the men and women currently serving in the armed forces of our nations. So please take the time on these special days to remember the men and women of our armed forces on Remembrance Day, Memorial Day, and Veterans Day. Plan a vacation too, or make it part of your next vacation to visit some of the historic battlefields and cemeteries along the way. And don't forget to bring the kids and grandkids so they too can remember the sacrifices made by these great men and women. And when you are there, take a quiet moment to reflect. And to quote John McCrae, "The torch be yours to hold high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders Fields." And with that, folks, I will bid you adieu today. If you enjoyed my homage to the greatest generation and have a story about another great veteran, please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear about it. If you'd like more information about historic battlefields and vacations, you can visit our website at realtravelexperts.com to find a travel advisor near you. And as always, folks, if you enjoyed this video, a like, subscribe, and a ring of the bell is certainly appreciated and helps us to spread the word. So until next time, happy travels!